Are you ready? Are you shitting down?
The Schein On Podcast.
The Schein On Podcast.
The Schein On Podcast, Season 5.
We're going to pull back the curtain of the divorce process. It's fun, insightful, tremendous guests. They're topics that far too often many people shy away from. But not here on the Schein On Podcast.
It's episode 85 of the Schein On Podcast. I'm Evan Schein. This week's episode is absolutely tremendous. Get ready for a conversation that's real, that's raw, that's refreshingly honest. And coming up, I'm sitting down with the incredible Laurie Gerber, relationship coach, TEDx speaker, and all-around expert on building connections with no bullshit. We're diving into what it really takes to create the relationships that you want. And Dave, Laurie was so good. She's got that fun, that no bullshit thing going on, which makes her so good at what she does. And Dave, look, I know you're in a relationship. You mentioned it, in the past, but let's be honest for a moment. Doesn't the possibility of working with Laurie almost make you want to just get back out there? She's that fun and that good.
This is why you have a producer, so you can ask me these questions, or you don't have to answer the question.
My wife listens to the podcast. Of course, I wasn't going to say that. I want to get back out there.
Yeah, there is a part of me, and I mentioned in this episode that I've tried many of the dating apps in the past, and you do get sort of burned out from that. So to imagine working with someone personally, that's exciting. And she's so dynamic and really optimistic and just gives great advice. So yeah, maybe someday down the road, if my girlfriend's not listening, maybe I will be working with Laurie.
And Dave, speaking of dynamic, let's fire up the docket.
Let's do it. Good segue.
And now, let's see what's on the docket.
All right, couple of good items on the docket. One a news item and one a media note. But let's take the news item first. Comes to us from people.com.
Item 1.
Headline reads, Emily Osment files for divorce from husband Jack Anthony after 5 months of marriage. They got married October 12th, 2024. And now this celebrity couple is planning to split. I guess Emily Osment is on Young Sheldon. I don't watch the show, but at any rate, your thoughts on this celebrity divorce? And it's
hey, what's wrong with people? 5 months?
Yeah.
Obviously there had to be red flags. There had to be doubts. I guess the bright spot is you've only wasted 5 months and you've made the decision to move on. But I want to read you some quotes from the article. There's a quote in the article that says, I did not know life could be this sweet. I'm so proud of the life we have built together and the people we have become over the past few years. This love is so big and so uniquely ours, and I know it can do anything. I'm so honored to stand next to you every day. I love you, Jack. Dave, when you hear those quotes talking about their relationship, but they were engaged, the early month when they were married, when you think about this, it's quite remarkable. Do you know people who got married and things just spiraled that quickly? Things just unraveled that quickly. It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I know. And I have a lot of friends that are divorced. I'm just sort of scanning through them in my head right now, and just about all of them were married for at least 5 years, and most of them 10 years. So it begs the question, how could you, what you're suggesting here, you're implying, how could you possibly have been so sure about something that you were so unsure about 5 months later? Maybe infidelity that we don't know about. I mean, I suppose that's possible, but that begs the question, why are you being unfaithful so soon? How did you get bored so quickly?
Well, I want to be fair. The other side of it is give them credit for getting out of it so soon, as opposed to staying in an unhappy marriage. Maybe there was a fundamental disagreement and they both came to the decision, you know what, we're better off apart than we are together. So is there any part of it, or part of you, Dave, that wants to give them credit? So many people, as we've talked about, stay in marriages, stay in relationships for far too long, thinking that their spouse is going to change, thinking the marriage is going to get better, thinking that having a kid or two or three is going to make the relationship better. Is there a piece of this that we should be applauding?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think now that I think about it, I can think of maybe one or two people that had a marriage that was relatively short. And as life goes on, you know, these kids are young here, these celebrity people, and the marriage will become sort of a distant memory. Like it'll be, they'll say, yeah, I was married once, but I don't really count that. It was only 5 months. It was a mistake. And I guess you do give them credit because just as we might sort of smirk at how hasty this marriage was, that let's face it, too many people stay in marriages that they shouldn't, and they damn themselves to a lifetime of sort of disappointment and coldness or whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, maybe that's what happened. Totally turned around on this. All right, then. Let's move on to item number 2.
Item 2.
We're going to take a look at the trailer for season 2 of the TV show Lioness, and then Evan is going to fill us in on his thoughts. I wish I'd seen this, but take a look at the trailer here and see what's shaking here. Let's go.
You have no family. You have no friends. You were abused until you gave yourself to me. Now you have a purpose, and it is noble. I'm doing everything different this time.
She's your field agent. Do what you think's best.
I have to be sure.
If she's able to make contact with the target, what are her directives then?
Neutralize the target.
Mr. President, we have a situation unfolding in real time.
Are you close?
Closer than we've ever been. You up for playing outside the lines? Ready to do my job, ma'am?
If your cover is blown, there is no saving you. You have to save yourself.
Do it quiet, and you do it clean.
Be careful poking that bear, or the target will be on you.
I said he's embedded. Mission is launched. We can't stop it now.
All right, we got intrigue, we got politics, we've got Nicole Kidman, we've got Morgan Freeman. What's going on in this show? Should I be watching this, Evan?
Well, Dave, before we even get to Lioness, which the answer is yes, you should absolutely watch it. The show's tremendous. Second season is brilliant, as is the first season. I want to admit something. I'm watching two shows, right? White Lotus and Lioness. And generally, I don't like watching two shows. It sort of reminds me as the guy who enters, I don't know, 10 March Madness brackets. You know, it's like I like getting through one show. And look, we'll talk about White Lotus in a moment after Lioness, but both of these shows have a divorce component. Now, in a recent episode of season 2, Zoe Saldana plays Joe. Outstanding performance by her. And she's a CIA caseworker who is on the front lines, and she's unexpectedly hurt in an ambush. Now, she has surgery, and she ends up having a deep, intimate bedside conversation with her husband about her job and her career, because he's trying to get her to realize it's dangerous. You've served your country. Now's the time to get out. And she makes a point to tell him when they took an oath as a married couple, he also took an oath to her career because she was a CIA agent prior to getting married. And so I want to ask you your thoughts on this and really the impact of work, careers, choices that people make on marriages and relationships, your own life. You mentioned you know a lot of people who went through a divorce. What's your take on that scene and also just the impact of one's career on a relationship?
Well, the therapist would tell you that the answer to this possible dilemma of marriage versus career is communication. When you get married, if you haven't had a conversation with your future spouse about your plans for your basic plans for the future and how important your career is and how many kids you want to have, for example. Because I know a lot of people get into a marriage and, you know, they have a kid and then maybe one spouse is like, well, that's it. I only want one. And the other one's, really? I want 7. So, and they never talked about how many they were going to have before. So there's that. There's, you know, it's maybe one of the reasons why we see so many celebrity divorces, and it's just speculation on my part, but is, you know, their careers are everything to them, you know, and they have to stay on top. They have to be hot. They have to work extra hard. They have to be out in the public eye and everything they have to do. And their private life maybe takes a back seat to that. But I would say the answer is communication, but I would say no one's perfect when it comes to that. And so, you know, there's always stress. You would like to think, you know, somebody, a guy on my softball team, you always used to say, softball's important, but remember, family, work, softball, in that order. Okay. So, and I really liked softball too. So, if you would like to think that family would be first, and that would include your spouse, but it's not always the case, and it's not always black and white. You know, what if you have to move? Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't sort of going off your priority, you know, list and things like that? Doesn't resentment build if you don't feel supported in your career, if you don't feel that you have the support of your spouse, especially in, you know, from Lioness in that episode, she was a CIA agent prior to getting married. So is there something to be said for that the resentment, the anger, the hostility, the control, does it? And I agree with you, communication, it's a must, right? But is there that other side to it, which is you knew what you were getting into? You can't complain about it now.
Yeah, not only that, but I think you need to feel supported in your career. If you know, have a dispute with someone at work, you have a bad day, you come home, you want to talk to your spouse about it. If your spouse isn't the one who supports you, then it's like nobody's going to support you. And that doesn't mean they have to agree with everything you did. You know, they can say, hey, I'll always support you, but I think you need to go back and say, that's what I would think. But still, support. And maybe the word I'd like to use is root for them. Do you root for your spouse? You know, I do know a couple, and they, at least by an outward appearance, they actually compete professionally. And like the wife, you know, wants to do better than the husband and doesn't like it when he's making more money than she. And to me, that you've got it backwards. You know, if you both make, you know, $300,000 a year, and all of a sudden your spouse gets a promotion and they make $500,000 a year, you should be delighted. It's only going to help you. And plus, this is your person. If you don't want this person to succeed, then who do you want to succeed?
So Dave, next time you're out to dinner with these people, here's what I need you to do. I need you to take my business card and whoever you like more, right? Just gently, just slide it over in their direction.
Will do, Evan. Yeah, it's a good. But you watch for little moments like that, and that's part of your marketing plan. I want them to have a good lawyer. So coming up, and also coming up, a segment that has caught fire here in the Schein On Nation, and that's overrated or underrated.
Overrated.
Or underrated.
We cherry pick 5 topics, and for each one, Evan tells us whether it's overrated or underrated. And his is the final pronouncement, people. That is the word, and it is the gospel. We take a couple legal and a couple non-legal. We'll start with the legal ones first. Keeping the house in a divorce. Keeping that marital house, staying in the house. Is that overrated or underrated?
Dave, keeping the house in a divorce is overrated if your sole reason is you want the house to be able to say, I got the house, which I hear from people all the time. There's more to it than just, I got the house. Affordability, consistency of the children. Some people want a fresh start and prefer the fresh start. Educational considerations for the kids. So if your reason is I want the house so you can tell everybody you got the house, because look, a marital home was the asset that people historically fought over the most. I think you're seeing things change based on the world we're living in and real estate and things like that. But it's overrated if your reason is solely that you just want to say you got the house.
Overrated.
Well, I'm glad you said that because, yeah, maybe it's a myth, but I just seem to think that most divorce lawyers historically have said, don't move out of the house unless you absolutely have to. And I ignored that, and I moved out of the house when I was splitting with my wife. But
I got to tell you, look, it's smart because, look, at the end of the day, and they're two separate things: who gets the house in final settlement, and if someone moves out on a temporary basis. And one of the reasons people say don't move out on a temporary basis is because until you have a parenting schedule or a custody arrangement worked out, there's always that concern if you move out and then you're solely reliant on your spouse to see the kids, right? So, but I got to tell you, living together when you're going through a divorce, it's terrible.
Right.
I mean, there's not a judge in the land who's going to say it's healthy for the parents, it's healthy for the kids, continue to live together. Things only escalate, things only get worse.
Yep. It's not like in the movies, like in The War of the Roses, where Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner put like masking tape down to divide the house. Didn't work out so well for them either, by the way. Next item for overrated, underrated, hiring a private investigator. And this is attached to divorce cases again. Overrated or underrated, hiring a PI?
Dave, 2 for 2. Hiring a PI is overrated. I know a lot of PIs, and if they're listening to this, I love you anyway, but hiring you is overrated if, again, the purpose is to catch your spouse having an affair or to following the whereabouts of that spouse. Look, before New York was a no-fault state, it made sense, right? From a bargaining chip, a leverage standpoint, it made sense. You needed grounds to get divorced. Post no fault in New York, the need to hire a PI is just not there. Sometimes it is, but generally at times when my clients have hired a PI or it's made sense is more in the financial context, because if there's an affair, if there's infidelity, it has absolutely no bearing on custody or child schedules or child custody orders. But professionals, I think, are much more important, are forensic accountants, business evaluators, appraisers, and people like that. And so for those reasons, hiring a PI, it's overrated.
Overrated.
We move on to some lighter topics. Next item, morning routines. Overrated or underrated? My morning routine, for what it's worth, Evan, is a cup of coffee and watching the previous night's Stephen Colbert show. That's my morning routine. I do enjoy it. But your thoughts on morning
routines?
And
how great is that?
Yeah.
And how great is that, right?
Yeah.
So, Dave, morning routines are underrated. Look, my morning routine is sacred to me. I get up in my house before anyone else. I make coffee, check my emails, I read the newspaper. And I have to say this, I hear crickets, and I absolutely love it. And I'll work out. Maybe I'll do a little meditation if I'm feeling it, maybe a little yoga. But waking up and having that structure, it structures my mind. It organizes my thoughts. It organizes and sets the tone for the entire day. I feel better. I feel more productive, and I feel happier.
You hear the crickets? Very good. I'm jealous that is an awesome morning routine, and definitely underrated. All right, we got our first underrated. Moving right along, 2 more to go. Vinyl records resurgence. There has been, in recent years, I'm looking around because I have an album here on my desk somewhere, but I can't find it. For whatever reason, this old-fashioned way of listening to music has come back. I have a ton of albums. I no longer have a turntable. I need to get one of those if I want to listen to any of these albums. Your thoughts on vinyl's comeback?
Dave, it's underrated, and not because I'm a big music buff. I know you are, and I'm sure that you have a big vinyl record collection. But look, I love a good comeback story. That's the reason this is underrated to me. I can appreciate the vinyl records resurgence. I'll admit it. I did hop on the vinyl record train. I have one in my home office. Again, I'm not a huge music person, but I love a good comeback story. I could appreciate it, and I could appreciate how into getting vinyl records and really collecting those records that people are. But tell us more about your collection. Is it something that is important to you? Were you always into it? You strike me as a big vinyl records guy.
I do. I still have the first 45 I ever purchased. The song is Saturday Night by the Bay City Rollers. 45s, for those that don't know, for those younger than us. It's sort of a mini record, right? A mini record that it was just one song, and then you flipped it over. It had a different song on the back. I mean, I'm looking up at my wall. I have some albums framed for posterity. Huey Lewis and the News, Sports, John Cougar Mellencamp, American Fool, Duran Duran, Rio, and the Cars' debut album, The Cars. There's nothing like the tactile sensation of putting your hands on an album, opening the album, taking it out of the jacket, reading the liner notes while you listen to the tracks. And the sound quality is terrific. It's probably better than anything you hear digitally. But the biggest difference in today's music versus the days of the album, because let's face it, the concept of the album is simply gone now, because you don't have to listen to a whole album. You're not even encouraged to listen to a whole album. Just cherry pick what songs, make a playlist, etc. Albums were journeys. You listen to a Springsteen album or even like Billy Joel's, a lot of his. It took you from one place to another. You had to start at track one, side one, and make your way through. And that's how you got to enjoy songs that you weren't necessarily going to hear on the radio. It doesn't exist anymore. So I'm with you.
Underrated.
What do you have a prized record, Evan?
My latest purchase is Taylor Swift.
Hey! Attaboy, you can shake it off with the best of it.
Not mine.
Okay. All right. Final item for overrated, underrated, and it's a big one, and it just happened this week. Daylight savings times. I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts on this. We're all working on one fewer hours of sleep right now. Overrated or underrated, Evan?
Dave, absolutely underrated. I love daylight savings. I don't care that we lost an hour as we spring ahead. I need sunlight. I need longer days. I need more time outside. I have this date in March circled on my calendar for months. I love it so much. I was actually thinking about having a daylight savings party this past weekend. You want me to tell you what I did last night? I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
You want to know?
I do.
I grilled.
Oh, nice.
Filet mignon, some vegetables on the grill, had a glass of wine as I'm cooking, and it was 6:30 at night. You know what that means? That means the sun was still out. The sun was setting. When it's dark out at 4:30, I can't grill outside. I can't have a glass of wine. I can't see what I'm doing. And if, you know what? I need more sunlight, more daylight. I absolutely love daylight savings. And for those reasons, it is underrated.
Underrated.
I'm with you. I like it both ways. I like it whenever we have to shift the clocks ahead or back, because this is the best one. That extra hour of sunlight. Yeah, I was out last night at a bar trivia event, and we looked out the window at 6:37. The still light. We're like, whoa, what's that? It seems to happen in the blink of an eye. It seems like just not too long ago, it was getting dark at 4:45. And pretty soon it's going to be light at 7:45 and 8 p.m. Good time.
Our featured guest on the Schein podcast is Laurie Gerber. She is a renowned life coach and relationship expert specializing in love coaching. With over 20 years of experience, including leadership roles at the Handle Group, she has appeared on the Today Show, Dr. Phil, and served as a love expert for Match, JDate, and other dating sites. Laurie, welcome to the Schein podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we are absolutely thrilled to have you on. We are going to talk all about relationships, dating in the post-divorce world, one of my favorite topics. So I want to start by asking, give us the worst piece of advice you've ever heard.
If we're dating after divorce?
We're dating after divorce.
Get right in there. Get right in there.
Why is that the worst? Because so many people and so many of my clients say, you know what? My friends say, jump back in. You need to get back in there right away.
Yeah, I'm okay. Well, first of all, I think if you have not done the work to learn the lessons from the experience that you just got out of, and you have not restabilized your family, if you have a family, including your children, it is very distracting. Understandable that you want to be distracted, but very distracting to jump back into love and dating. I 100% do not advise you look for your next real partner. I'm more open with casual dating and flinging very shortly after a divorce, but I am Definitely not in favor of jumping back in to find your person. That is a reaction to loneliness. That is an act of desperation. That is not the most likely to support your desire to choose better the second time.
So it sounds like what you're saying is go out and have some fun after you get divorced.
After a mourning period, right? After a restabilization period, after you get your stuff together, and you feel good about yourself and you think that would be a good idea, yes, you go back out and you do another round of learning like you did probably the first time, where you probably dated a lot of people before you picked your person to marry. You are now going to rinse, repeat, and do that again.
What's the biggest misconception people have about dating after divorce?
I think that, unfortunately, I think the biggest misconception people have is that there's no good ones out there, that all the good ones are taken.
When you hear that and someone says that to you, how do you respond? What do you encourage that person to do?
Okay. How I respond when someone says there are no good ones out there is I go, wow, that's pretty mean. You're telling me all the humans are bad. All the humans are garbage if they're not in a relationship. Yikes. And then I remind them that new people are becoming single every single day, not like a few, a lot, like tens of thousands of people are becoming single every day, or not just becoming single, but maybe going from that casual dating phase to the getting serious about settling down with someone phase, or just getting online for the first time, or just whatever it is, right? Just deciding they're ready. So to say something like there are no good ones out there is not only incredibly negatively biased, but it is also just so statistically and factually incorrect. It's laughable.
Divorce is such a tough time for someone. It's transition. It's sad. I mean, all sorts of emotions, and the process takes such an incredibly long time. And people very often are turned off to the idea of dating again, finding love again. How could someone look at love, look at dating, look at getting back out there as a positive experience during one of the most difficult times in their life, or just coming out of that time period?
Right. I really think the year or two after divorce should be spent on self-discovery, self-love, personal growth, introspection, again, stabilizing the family, stabilizing your own health and well-being, stabilizing your career and finances. I do not think that you should be focusing on your next thing while you're grieving your last thing and restabilizing your life. So people do it. I help people do it. If they insist on doing it, there are healthy ways to do it versus unhealthy ways to do it, but I am not rushing anybody. And that's why I really like actually coaching people post-divorce versus I used to coach 20 and 30-year-olds pre-divorce.
And I have to imagine for a moment that experience of working with people in their 20s or 30s is so incredibly different than working with people who are coming out of a divorce.
Yeah, and the main difference is you don't have to rush, and you don't have to get married again, and you don't have to have pressure to have children. It is a totally different ballgame. I mean, obviously I'm generalizing, it's not always the case,
Sure.
But it's really so different, and I love it so much more. And I really want to say to your original question, don't rush. Feel your feelings, go through the phases. You can't actually rush grieving. You can't rush recovering and learning from your divorce, and you shouldn't. Give yourself that investment actually in yourself to do that work and have that time and do that healing, so that when you do get back out on the dating scene, you are going to show up much better and you're going to attract a much better caliber person.
Laurie, I'm curious, is there, in the people that you see who are coming out of a divorce, is there that feeling that some people, not everybody, but some people have, that they have failed, that they failed at love, they failed at relationships, and this failure that they're feeling makes it, that they feel it makes it so hard for them even to emotionally get back to a place where they can feel like they can love again, feel like they can go on a date because of how they experienced the breakdown of their marriage?
Yeah. I think feelings of failure haunt people across areas of life, but for sure when you've experienced a breakup, and especially if you experienced a really hard relationship leading up to that breakup, or also maybe a very hard divorce, maybe you're struggling with your children, all of that can really impact your self-esteem and your confidence. However, when I hear that, right, that I feel like a failure, I go, who are you comparing yourself to? because look around. Most people are getting divorced, number one. And sorry to tell you, I can report because I've been a relationship coach for over 20 years. Most people who are in relationships feel that they're failing. So who are these people that are doing so well? Unfortunately, not a lot of humans on the planet are doing well at love. It's just not something. We're not great at health. We're not great at love. We're not great at making a living doing something we love. Like the human race is not that advanced in terms of having these things we all think should be easy according to Disney movies. We're just not that advanced. So I say, I understand you feel you failed. Let's do some learning from that. Let's take the lessons from that. But what's really going on is you're scared, right? Because you're not a failure compared to most of the world. Most of the world is failing at this because you haven't learned how to do it.
And I'm sure you see people who they haven't been on a first date in years and years. And so there is that unknown, that uncertainty, all those feelings of being afraid, being scared. If you had to sum up modern dating today in 3 words.
Your questions are awesome.
What would it be?
Modern dating today in 3 words. Okay. Tumultuous, overwhelming, exhausting. Is that what you were going for?
You know, I left it to you, the expert, but you know, I have to ask you, you gave 3 great words, brilliant words. I absolutely love that. But you also didn't mention anything overwhelmingly positive or exciting. So I have to ask you, is it that tough out there? Is it that, I mean, should someone who's listening to this feel, wow.
Get back on the bench.
Yeah, exactly. Tell us more about that, because there has to be some positives.
Listen, I listen to people all day who come to me for help because they feel those things, right? So I may be biased by who I'm hearing from every day. I do think there are people who feel relieved to get out of a marriage, feel excited to get back out into the world, possibly have already fallen in love with someone else that's way better, so I don't think that it applies to everybody that getting back into dating is tumultuous and overwhelming and exhausting. But what I do find is that, especially if you've been out of the dating arena for years, if not decades, you really don't know how it works. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what to expect. You don't have the skills. So I think it does feel that way for those people.
So give us a red flag that someone who just hasn't been in the dating game for many years, coming out of a divorce, give us a red flag that someone who's going on a first date for in a very long time should know.
A red flag you should know, like for you going on the date or for who you're be meeting? Okay. Because I thought what you were asking is this, which is like, how do I know I'm ready? And
well, give us both. Answer both. Give us, if you're someone experiencing a first date, what's a red flag if you just haven't been in the dating game?
I'll tell you what if you are waving a red flag, it's because you are not resolved about your divorce. You want to complain. You literally just want someone to listen to you or have sex with you because you're unresolved about your past relationship and you need validation and companionship. You are not, then you are the red flag. You are the red flag. But if you have done your work to heal, you feel excited again to meet new people. You want to learn about new people. You want to see who you connect with better. Maybe you sold out on something in your marriage and you're not planning to sell out on that again when you get back out there and you're ready to go. And then you meet someone and they do those things. And then, that's a red flag coming the other way. But I look for, I warn my clients that everybody lies. Right. Everybody really does lie. I have a whole TEDx talk on it. And so you do have to look for what your date is lying about, hiding, or not wanting to talk about. And you do need to go in knowing your deal breakers. So really your red flags are based on what your deal breakers are. So if you have a deal breaker, like, I don't want someone who's emotionally unavailable, or I don't want someone who's in an active addiction, or I don't want somebody who's actually not physically available. I don't want somebody who's not divorced yet. If you have deal breakers, then the red flag is the first time you see a hint of those deal breakers.
And Laurie, I absolutely love your TED Talk. And it's like we're sharing your brain, because I want to go into a segment, love lies and awkward conversations. And so what's a lie, a white lie in relationships that people think is harmless, but it actually does long-term damage?
We can talk an hour about this. What is a lie that people think is harmless? Okay. Well, the most popular ones are your photo is not current. You misrepresent your finances. You misrepresent your age. I will call it lying. You misrepresent your height. That's a very popular one. For women, they often misrepresent how fun they are or how sexy or sexual they are. So these are all things that people do absolutely innocently, and I've heard it a million times. I just wanted to get through the door. I just wanted to get that first meeting or that first FaceTime or that first date. And then I was going to tell, or then I would see if it mattered or not to tell. And I actually get that, right? Like I do get that because the algorithms are, what they do, and people are very shallow when they're on the sites. And so I get that, but that is not a great sign if the person does not come clean when you first get face to face. If they come clean when you first get face to face, that's great. Then you can start a conversation about, like, do we believe in honesty? Do we believe in transparency? But so that's like the initial kind of lying that goes on. Then there's a kind of lying that goes on in the first 3 dates, which is where you hide your liabilities. So I have a whole component of my digital course about liability compatibility. And that's what people are hiding in the first few dates when their PR agent is actually at the date for them. That version of them that is for public consumption. That's when, and my joke is, and it's not really a joke, but my estimate is that everyone has about 7 liabilities. And that could be a health issue, a personality issue. It could be a bad habit. It could be that they're having to care for someone in their home that takes their time.
Sure.
So there's also, it could be, a pet that you're allergic to, or a place they live that you can't live, things like that. So you're looking for someone with whom your liabilities are compatible. In other words, you either find them charming, you don't mind them, or you can tolerate them, or you can work with them and both get better. That's who you're looking for. But what people do in the first few dates is they hide their liabilities. They try really hard to let you, make sure you can't find them. I think that is a big mistake. Big mistake. It's just a big mistake. If you're looking for a fling, okay, that's fine. But if you're really looking for your person, you need to open the kimono, start talking about the liabilities, and see what you really think of them. I learned about my husband's liabilities very early on in his mine, and it brought us closer together. It did not. So when you're finding your real person, liabilities don't break you up. They bring you closer together. But everyone who's not your person, they break you up, and that's for the best. So it works either way.
So what's really interesting about that, and I absolutely agree with you and totally understand that perspective. It brings me back. I had a client who was recently divorced, and this is about 10 years ago. And she said to me, Evan, she said, online dating is great because the amount of people that are on apps or on websites, it increases the pool, right, of people. So my ability to get first dates, right, it is not the problem. Her problem was, and I'm open to the idea that there could have been a lot of other problems, but her problem, according to her, was that the second date or third date, unless everything went so perfectly, because of how many people are on these sites, and you can simply swipe left or swipe right or go to another dating site, there is that concern about putting your liabilities out there, because if it's not absolutely perfect or you don't check every single box, it's so easy for that person to just simply try to find someone who does, as opposed to giving you the chance, right, and going on a second date or third date. So what would you say to someone like that?
Yeah, it's such a good point. You are taking a risk when you open the kimono and start to talk about your liabilities. If you're meeting somebody who is new to the sites and is having that experience of a kid in a candy shop, you shouldn't be wanting to be with that person anyway, right? They are having their phase where they're shopping and trying all the flavors, and that's awesome, and they should have that, and that's great. What you want, if you're looking for your person, if you're looking for your one, or your, I call it your suitable companion, long-term monogamous, you want to, timing matters, right? So you need to be in the space where you've already seen lots and lots and lots and lots of choices, and you've honed what you're looking for. And they have also seen lots and lots and lots of choices and honed what they're looking for, so that they already have had the insight. Oh, right. With all those people I tried, I found out their liabilities on date 6 when I was already in love or already having sex or already met my kids. Oh my God, that was a disaster. Now I've learned. I want to find out the liabilities earlier. I want to do it sensitively, kindly, and in a fun way. but now I realize what I'm really looking for, what it really takes to find that person and make sure there's a real compatibility. And so at that time, that's not going to scare the right person away.
Laurie, we've talked a lot about getting into dating, getting back into dating, going into something new. Let's talk for a moment about getting out of it. What's your advice on how to just tell someone, I'm just not into you, without just simply ghosting them?
You know, you'd be amazed actually how many people don't date. Like they literally are too afraid to date because they don't know how to say that sentence.
I get that. I get it.
I don't know how to say.
Yep.
And I, by the way, if you got a divorce, you did learn how to say no, thank you, or accept it.
Well, I was going to say, we're accepted.
Exactly. So there is some precedent for dealing with endings. So in my course, I give my beautiful clients very specific canned responses, right? Because we do need to be efficient, especially if you're dating online. You need to be able to have your one-liners that work every time.
Sure.
And there is a very specific, now I only let my daters have 3 dates before they have to cut it off if the person is not a real candidate. And we have a rating system and a grid and a whole nerdy spreadsheet and the whole thing we do, right? So we are not trying to break up after 7, 8 dates and after having sex, which is really helpful because it's way harder to break up then. We are breaking up after the first, second, or third date. Much easier, right? And it's something like, and sometimes it's even after just a video chat.
Sure.
Great to meet you. You seem wonderful. I don't think this is a romantic match. I wish you the best of luck. Just like
short, simple.
Just like when you're, dealing with someone at work, it's a grace and wisdom sandwich. You start out saying something kind, you put the wisdom and the truth in the middle, and you end with something kind but declarative, because sometimes people go, no, you haven't given me a chance. I don't understand. Best of luck means no, thank you. We are now done.
Yeah, you start with the stroke.
Yeah, you start with a stroke, you say your truth, which is the hard part, and then you end with a kind but clear no thank you. If you're a little further in, you're not going to get away with only 3 sentences.
Sure.
By the 3rd date, you might have to say, I don't think the amount of time we want to spend together is compatible. There's really 6 things that need to be compatible for you to proceed. Any one of those 6 things, if it's not there, you would have to add a sentence of like, we're really not compatible in this way.
Tell us what those 6 things are.
Okay. I thought you might ask. Let me pull up my list. Okay. So number 1, how much time you want to spend together. That's one of the big reasons after 3 dates. It's like you want to spend every day. They want to meet when they're in town once a month. That's not compatible. The second is what we do together. Are you someone who is looking for an activity companion or just a travel companion? Are you looking for dinners every night? Or are you looking for a date on the weekend? Like, what are we agreeing to? Are we playing pickleball together, or are we having separate lives, right? Just coming together for sex? What is the literal, not just the time commitment and routine and regularity, but also what activities are we doing together? Is that compatible? I mean, there's a real range out there, so you have to inquire. The next one I would say is communication rituals and rules. So communication rituals are like, we talk every night before bed, or you wish me luck when I'm going to go do something new, or whatever. We have phone sex when we're away. But the rules are things like, if I text you and I see you read it, you have to get back to me right away, even if it's with a can't talk now, right? Rules are things like, if I don't hear from you in 24 hours, I'm going to think you don't like me anymore. So, and I can't tell you how many thousands of dollars I've made helping people interpret what does it mean that they didn't answer, or that they answered this way, or whatever.
Aren't we all just therapists at the end of the
day? So that's really important. So we've got time together, what you do together, the communication rituals and rules, conflict resolution. How do we resolve it? We are going to have sticky issues because we each have these liabilities, and we have life, and we have complications, and when people get hurt feelings, how do we manage that? Again, I teach my clients a very specific rubric, and I insist that they get good at it, and that they teach the people they're falling in love with the same rubric. But if you're incompatible on how you resolve conflict, or you can't get on the same page, that's not going to work. The last 2 are about sex. May I speak freely?
Let's go there.
Okay. The last two are about sex. And I don't expect you to talk about everything you like in bed and the frequency you like on the first or second date. But if you're serious about finding your person and you do want to have sex with the person and they want to have sex with you, you can tell them, I don't have a fourth date unless I'm really serious about someone. I need to ask you some important questions. Where are you at about monogamy? Are you into it? Do you like it? Does it turn you on? Does it turn you off? What's your ideal situation? I'm not proposing right now. I'm just asking where you're at.
Sure.
I want to know, right? And so you need to have, and I can't tell you how many people think they've agreed on monogamy, and guess what? They have different definitions of monogamy. Can you believe it?
You know what? I can believe it because what I do for a living and what I hear every single day in my practice. So I can believe it. But you know what? Yeah, it's an important conversation to have. And I would think far too many people just don't have it.
Yeah, and I have 4 steps to establishing monogamy, which include getting it in writing, which I'm sure you can understand the importance.
I could appreciate that.
And everyone thinks that's crazy until you're in a, divorce situation. So, and the last one is, what kind of frequency and type of sex are you into? Like, and again, I'm sorry, but sex is what distinguishes friendship from the person, the partner, the person, the love, right? The romance. So you can't pretend like it's a non-issue or not important or shallow or irrelevant. It's kind of the thing that distinguishes what it is you're looking for. So if you are not compatible, if you have a kink they don't like, if you like it every day and they like it once a month, that's not going to work out. That's something you want to know before you fall in love, before you have sex. And that goes both ways,
Yeah, no, 100%.
It goes both ways. So,
and Laurie, I want to ask you, you're talking a lot about compatibility. And so how important is it for couples to have the following things in common? Political views, hobbies, taste in music, TV, views towards family. Do you have to play pickleball, with your spouse? Maybe, maybe not. Is that a good thing? I can see both sides of the argument. I always say my wife,
let's take it one by one. So first of all, across the board, I think people are way too fixated on sharing interests and hobbies. Way too fixated. First of all,
that's what I tell my wife, because I find like we have very little in common. She'll probably listen to this and be like, Evan, what are you talking about? We have so much in common. But you know what? Like, we don't have to do every single thing together.
I hope not. And most people who are in midlife and post-divorce have already, hopefully, once they're looking for their person, spent enough time on their own that they have friends they can do things with. Sure. They can do things by themselves. They have other recourse, that family member. I don't believe in a relationship where you feel you need to spend, quote unquote, every moment together. I don't think that's healthy. Okay, that being said, political views depends on how important your political views are, right? If your political views or your religious stuff is the most important thing to you, then yes, it's going to matter. But what research shows, I think, is that what makes people happy together is that they're happy people, right? Happy, satisfied people make happy, satisfied couples.
That is true, yeah.
It does not correlate to religion, politics, height, race, class, age. Like all of those things are way less important determinants of happiness in a relationship than two people being happy to begin with. So that's another topic. But TV shows don't matter. I do think it's important to have some. What were the other ones on the list? Can you read the list again?
Politics, hobbies, taste in music, TV, movies, and view towards family.
Not. Let's leave family aside for a second. All of those kind of like leisure activities, which in a healthy life is maybe an hour to 2 a day. I think those are great things to do separately. If you happen to have them in common, bonus, but they don't seem important to me at all. Perhaps I'm biased because I have none of that in common with my husband, and it doesn't matter at all.
You're making me feel a lot better about my own marriage right now.
But relationship to family and family values, if you will, so important to be coordinated on. I don't think you have to be same. I think you have to be coordinated on those. Like, for example, I live in New York because my parents live in New York. I'm going to live here till they die. Yep. That's how I am about family. And I see my parents regularly. I literally asked my husband that first date, like, hey, can you live in New York? Are you okay if we spend the rest of our lives here? Because that's what we're doing. So
that's kind of like when on the third date, I said to my wife, just so you know, I'm never moving to Long Island. I will never go there. It's not near my office. The traffic is absolutely miserable. I don't want to get stuck. I will. And to her credit, she said, sure, moving to Long Island was not important, but that was important to me. And we had that conversation very early on.
Exactly. So now my husband is also very family oriented. Was a primary caregiver to our kids. Loves his loves his own family, very participatory in his own family. We cross pollinate our families. However, his family all lives in different parts of the world. So we are not the same. He
Sure.
sees his family 4 times a year. I see my family every week. Not the same, very compatible, right? I would never forsake the 4 trips a year we do with his family. I totally honor that. I love that. And he, loves seeing my family once a week. So orientation towards family, both your children and your parents and your extended family, I think can really be a deal breaker for people if it's not coordinated.
And Lori, I'm totally with you. I would say view towards family, and in the past decade, even more so in the past 5, 6 years, I am seeing politics, just given the world we're living in. I have had couples when I'm negotiating prenups, couples break up. I have had people, not a lot of people, but people divorce over very strong political views, especially in this polarizing political climate of the past 8 years, right? Especially recently, I am finding that politics, especially in the younger generation, is something that people in their 20s and 30s really, really feel strongly about.
It's a deal breaker. Yeah.
Deal breaker.
Yeah. And I think to your point, these things do change over time and depending on the culture you're in.
What's a common dating mistake that you find with your clients that people make at age 50 or even older that perhaps they would not have made when they were younger?
That is interesting. I think what happens when we're older is we're more afraid to try new things. So I think I just hear so many people over 50 afraid of the online dating. I mean, everything from just like, how do I do it, all the way to like, there's gonna be predators there, I'm gonna be robbed, And I like to think younger people, first of all, feel more comfortable with technology and things online, but also just have more courage and bravery to try new things. And I do think it's a mistake to poo-poo online dating at any age.
There's the old adage that honesty is often the best policy. I know you're talking about obviously putting all the liabilities out there, but what's an example of a line in the dating profile that just might be too brutally honest?
Well, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I do not want my clients to put any negativity in their dating profiles. So I am not about saying, liars don't apply or cheaters get lost, or if you're a fatty, forget it. Just there's no need. And in fact, I even had a woman recently just take out today. I told her to take out of her profile, I'm looking for an intelligent, successful, confident man. Because I was like, first of all, those words don't mean anything. They're completely subjective. Everybody has a different interpretation. Any man who has any sense of self-worth is going to think he has those things, whether he does or not. But more likely what it's going to do is make a nice guy feel insecure, right? Because you're saying these words that don't mean anything, but are kind of, heavy. Right?
Yeah. No, it's heavy to read.
So I think in your profile, you want to talk about the kinds of things you like. You want to give some details and specifics. You want to give people a hook, like ask me about blah, blah, blah. She did a great hook. She said something like, my favorite, here's what's in my Netflix queue, what's in yours, just like a simple, easy thing. So I don't want you to put anything negative, brutally, anything. Sure. It should be brutally anything in your profile because it's an ad, right? Like it is meant to make people feel comfortable and want to talk to you, not scare them away.
What's the most ridiculous reason one of your clients has ever given you about why they wanted to end a relationship?
That's so interesting. Ridiculous. I'm usually in favor of people ending relationships. I don't usually.
Well, let me ask you, do you encourage, to that point, do you encourage someone if the reason is ridiculous and they're having trouble seeing it, but that, look, it's the person's gone on a lot of dates, maybe they're too picky, maybe they're, would you ever encourage someone to give someone another try?
You know what? I am tough love with my clients and I want them to take responsibility. So I often will send them back in to do a better job of either asking a good question or making a person feel comfortable to tell who they really are. I really want a good reason not to be like, I want you to tell me the deal breaker that person showed signs of for why you broke up. Other than that, I don't think you're doing a good job dating, right? So I do send people back to give second chances, but I only give you 3 dates. And if you're not doing a good job on 3 dates finding out what you need to know, you need to hone your skills on how to ask questions and make people comfortable on those dates. I will say I was sad about the people who broke up because they didn't like the smell of the person or they didn't like the way they kissed. That made me sad just because it was like, that's so, you like everything else about the person. Can't we work on the kissing? Can't we wear cologne?
On that point though, I would think, just to push back, I would think the kissing, the chemistry, if everything else is, a match or everything else checks a box, is the kissing, the chemistry, I would think that's important. And and if that's not right, date 1, date 2, whenever it happens, how hard is it to come back from that?
Yeah. As somebody who got more and more attracted to my husband over time, I will say I am a proponent of, I think it's actually 50-50. If I was going to give odds, like if you're not attracted at first, could you get attracted? I think yes, but it's 50-50. It's not like bet all your money.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
But it's like, but try kissing, try giving some coaching on the kissing.
Yeah.
I have a wonderful story of a couple who has now happily been together for probably 2 years. This woman, had never really found the one. She was in her 50s. She found this great guy. He finally hit all the boxes. The one issue was he was still not yet divorced, which I usually say is a deal breaker, but he did in fact get divorced. But the other thing was she didn't like how he dressed. She thought he was like a nerd. And turns out his wife had been dressing him for not the market, not the open market for a really long time. And he had no clue. He had never shopped for himself, probably went right from his mother to having one shop for him. He had no sense of style. His daughters were, always harassing him about it. And she had the courage on my coaching to mention it to him. He said, I know, you're right. Please help. Can we go on a makeover? And she made him over and they lived happily ever after.
Yeah, no, look, and they bonded over that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do believe in giving a chance for the attraction to grow, but it's 50-50, right? So you give it a chance up to 3 dates, in my opinion, and a makeout session in public. And if it's a 6 or below, the ratings are not going up, abort the mission.
How complicated is love and human romance? I mean, I see people, 50% of the people on average are going to end up in my office and are going to end up in divorce. Nobody gets married thinking they're going to get divorced, yet people do. What do people not understand about human romance, love, or marriage?
Why is this happening? Well, I'll tell you what I have learned from working with people for 20 years is they don't think they're going to get divorced, but what they do tell me when they are getting divorced is that they always knew the thing that would break them up. They knew when they first met, they knew on their wedding day a lot of times, they certainly knew throughout the relationship that this thing is not right. So most people are not surprised by what ends up breaking them up.
So did they think it was just going to get better? Did they think it was going to be relatively small? Yeah.
I've heard it called smoking hopium, right? Like they're hoping it's going to get better. They think the coming together is going to make that thing better. And I think once in a blue moon, it does. But I think the biggest mistake or misunderstanding is that thing is going to get better unless you are concertedly working on it. I think the thing that was incompatible for my husband and me got worse and worse in our marriage. And if we didn't decide consciously to make it better to avoid a divorce, it absolutely would have ended a divorce. So.
But I think to that point, it's also work, right? Marriage, it's work, right? And who you are in your 20s is not going to be who you are in your 40s. Who you are pre-kids is not necessarily who you are going to be after kids. And I think a lot of people go into marriage with this idea that marriage, that honeymoon phase, is just going to continue forever. And then people find out very quickly is that, you know what? It's not. It's not.
That lasts 7 months, just so you know.
You're better. You're better than me. I was going to say 3, but
yeah, no, about 7 months when you first meet, and then then hopefully it turns into something enriching and beautiful and wonderful. And then if you have kids, you're distracted for 18 years. And that's why the divorces often happen, when the kids are older. And you're like, wait, this one? I'm gonna end up with this one?
Well, you're right, because, and I'm seeing more and more great divorce in the past few years. I mean, look, the life expectancy is longer. People are living into their 80s and their 90s, and people, when the children are out, people want that second act. People have hope. People want to travel. People want different things, and people are living longer, and they want to do things that either their spouse does not, and now they feel less restricted because the kids are older and out of college or living on their own.
Exactly. I mean,
So
I
what-
think especially I don't know how old you are, but just the times we live in, and that it really is the first time in history where, I mean, the relationship between men and women is so different now, and the options with technology are so different, and the complete popularity of divorce is so different than it's ever been in any other era, that it is really hard to stay in a marriage if it's not great and you're not working on it. It's certainly not your marriage after your kids leave the house. It's going to be nothing like your marriage when you first started out or when you were raising kids. If you're not reinventing that and making it great, it is going to be shit. Right? Like, it definitely is.
And your point brings me up to something else, which I'm fascinated by. And you see it probably in the dating world. I see it in the infidelity world, the divorce world, is social media and people comparing dates to this idea of what a date should be, or the expectation of what a date should be. And I see it on the marriage and the divorce side. Well, there's this social media image, this Facebook image, this TikTok, Instagram image that life is perfect, right? And you find out that person is absolutely miserable, and it's all a front. So how do you experience that with your clients in the dating world, and people getting unnecessarily discouraged by looking through and scrolling through social media?
I cut them off.
Yeah.
that is garbage, right? That's like eating poison, right? I really try to restrict the poison I allow my clients to eat or consume. And again, I'm treating a whole human when I coach someone on dating or love. If they do not understand that they control what they eat, what they drink, what they think, and what they consume, and how they spend their time, I have to start there, right? You are a human. You are the author of your life. You control all of that. Thank goodness. Really, thank goodness. None of that is up to someone else. You do not have to read the news. You do not have to be on social media. You do not have to compare yourself to your friends. You do not have to eat sugar. You do not have to drink wine every night. None of that is true. So let's just start with, how are you going to get your self-respect? How are you going to get your happy vibes? It's not going to be from social media. Social media is at best entertainment and at worst toxic. And when I say entertainment, I mean lies. like fiction on TV.
Yeah. No, I'm absolutely with you. And Laurie, I want to bring on someone who is good looking, someone who's successful, someone who is intelligent, and someone who I know has been taking copious notes on every single thing you've been saying. Producer Dave.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, well, I
write your profile.
I think I've been retired from Tinder, Bumble, Match. I'm no longer welcome on those platforms. I've just worn them out. No, and in theory, I am in a healthy relationship right now. But this isn't about me. You know what this is about? This is about the segment called "They Said It."
They said it.
They said it.
They said it.
See how I got out of that one? All right. They said it. They said it is the segment where I provide 3 quotes, and then we just hear whether our guest enjoys them or perhaps doesn't. So, Laurie, the first quote comes to us from psychologist and author James Dobson. And James had the following to say: Never marry the one you can live with. Marry the one you cannot live without. Your thoughts on that one?
Awesome. So I think what he's trying to say is, don't settle. And in my language, we call the whole package the 3 H's: the head, the heart, and the hoo-ha. Person that makes sense for your life, the person who feels right, and the person who turns you on. And the person you can't live without is someone who hits all 3 of those H's with high scores. And so don't marry don't marry. And all the divorces are because someone picked one or two out of those H's and didn't think they could have all three H's happy. So marry the one you cannot live without means all three H's are present.
All three H's. The head, the heart, and the... Okay. We always need to have that ready. I like that. You should put that on a T-shirt, Laurie. Those three H's. All right. The second quote comes to us from author Jodi Picoult. Jodi had the following to say: "The only way to make sure people you love are safe is sometimes to lie to them."
Find this.
Your thoughts on that, Laurie?
You Google people who promote lying.
Maybe.
Just a baby.
Well, I know that you are extremely pro honesty, and I wanted to test the edges. Yes. So, what do you think of that?
I think she might mean, I don't know this author, but
Right.
I do believe, if I get a divorce because my partner cheated and my kid is 8 years old, do I need to tell the details of that to my kid at that time? No, I don't think that's appropriate, right? I think there are appropriate, exceptions to my rule of truth, but very, very few, very, very few. In fact, my mother asked me to lie to my father the other day to say that a bathrobe she had bought him was from me, because she thought if I said it was from me, he would be more likely to wear it. And, within the next day, he was showing my brother the bathrobe. Your sister's so lovely. She got me this bathrobe. And we all realized, you can't control a lie. A lie just makes a freaking mess. So we came clean and told him the truth.
Well, but are there any occasions where you might lie to a partner in order to spare their feelings? And I'm thinking of something that maybe doesn't have to do. I mean, if you're working late with a colleague and you end up kissing that colleague, and then your significant other confronts you about it and you lie about it, I'd say that's pretty damaging. That's pretty damning. But if, someone says, "Oh, what did your sister think of my oil painting, my watercolor painting or whatever?" And you say, "Oh, she told me it was great," when really she said that's the worst friggin' thing I've ever seen. Like, you see where I'm going with that? Is it okay to lie sometimes? Yeah.
I do see where you're going. It's a complex answer, and you're not the first person who's asked me this, given the TEDx talk.
Yeah.
So in regards to sins, or breaches of integrity, if you do the crime, you should do the time, right? If you do the thing, own up to it. The sooner you do it, the lower the consequence will be. But in regards to saving someone's feelings, that is a very slippery slope. I don't want someone to save my feelings. Right. I don't think that's the highest level of intimacy with a friend, a family member, or a loved one. I don't want them to. Right. Like, I hope nobody is sparing my feelings, because I'd rather deal with the truth. That's the kind of relationship I think we should all want with each other. But I understand if it's not the relationship that you have. It's not like I go around saying everything I think to everyone. Right? Like, I do not believe that telling the truth means vomiting every opinion you have that nobody's even asking for, or even if someone is asking for it. Right. But if somebody asks you, you can say, do you really want to know? You might not like the answer. Right. And that gives them a chance to go, okay, maybe I don't want to know. And sometimes people say they don't want to know.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like, it's someone's right to say, I don't want to know the truth. Right. Cool. My dad doesn't want to know what stage cancer he has. I get that. I respect that,
Wow.
So a person has a right to not want to know the truth, but I don't think you should put anyone above your right to tell the truth. In other words, if you are lying to protect someone, are you really protecting them? Right? Is it really so awful if your sister doesn't like the painting? Like, maybe there's something to talk about there. Right?
Yeah. I mean, and then there's lying, and there's also leaving things out. Like, to pick up, I think you brought up a good example. Like, if my parents happen to be still together, remarkably, after all these years, but if one of them had gone outside the marriage, like, I don't need them to confess that to me ever. Like, I don't know why that information, my personal choice. I don't want to know. The only thing it could do is maybe hurt my feelings.
Here's the problem. Lineage repeats. It just does. It weirdly does. So the problem with parents not being honest with their children, and this goes back to the example of why did mommy and daddy really get divorced? if your kids don't know the real reason, they are still going to imitate the real reason in their own lives. I'm sorry. It's trippy and spiritual, but that is what happens. So I do think kids should know their entire history of their parents so they can understand themselves and the stuff that happens to them.
We might have to agree to disagree on that one. Look, no.
Nobody, trust me, nobody agrees with me. Nobody agrees.
Well, I hadn't thought of that. That is interesting. And yes, well, I know I have many friends who tell me that they have been unfaithful to their spouse, and they have a feeling that it came from their parents. Perhaps they're just kind of doing exactly what their dad did or what their mom did or whatever.
And let me tell you what happens when you realize you got it, just like you got your hair color and eye color. You can forgive your parents and you can forgive yourself, and you can actually have a chance at not doing it again. That's what happens. So it's actually very catalytic and transformational to know the truth of your lineage, but everyone's scared, right? Nobody wants to admit they cheat, but everybody cheats. So nobody wants to say they lie, but guess what? Everybody lies. And it's a big fat joke to me that we all
Well, preach on. You might be converting me here, Laurie. And that actually kind of it's kind of a nice segue into the final quote. And the final quote comes to us from Mary Ann Evans, who wrote under the pen name George Eliot. And Mary had the following to say: "It's never too late to be what you might have been."
Beautiful. Thank you for ending. You are good at this segment.
It's called producing, Laurie. It's what I do. Yeah. Thank you.
You're good at it. You're in the right job. It's never too late to be what you might have been. That is a beautiful synopsis of what I'm saying. Most people do not do the right work to be who they wish they would be. They think that they'll feel better if they just get plastic surgery, or if they just color their hair, or if they just meet the right new person. And unfortunately, that means you are skipping the real work to be who you want to be, which is the inner work to tell the truth to yourself and then tell the truth to other people.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes too, and it's because a lot of people get to a certain age and they sort of become defeatist. It's like, this is what I am. This is what I'm always going to be. And, if you aspired to be a certain thing, if you aspired to have true love, if you aspired to live in the mountains or whatever, and or give up your career in finance so you can write poetry, it's never too late to do it. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't even necessarily mean you'll pull it off, but it's not too late. It's not too late.
Thank you. I agree.
All right. Well, I'm glad we're all on the same page. And tremendous stuff today, Laurie. I really enjoyed it. And back to you, Evan, to wrap things up.
Dave, that was great. And Laurie, I got to tell you, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. This was as good as it gets, as fun as it gets. Tell everybody listening where they can get in touch with you, how they can get in touch, how they can learn all about the wonderful stuff that you're doing.
Awesome. LaurieGerber.com. LaurieGerber.com. If you do a /webinar, you will be introduced to my free webinar, the 3 secrets to finding and sustaining healthy love. So if you are someone who is either on the bench, starting to get in the game of dating, but getting frustrated, overwhelmed, tired, etc., or even in an early relationship that you're analyzing, I would definitely watch that free webinar. Definitely. I have a quiz on Are You Ready to Date Like You Mean It? Lots of blogs and other fun stuff. Private coaching, group coaching, all the things. So the website is the best place.
Fantastic. You have so many wonderful resources out there for people who are looking to get back into dating, post-divorce in general. You have amazing resources, and I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. Episode 85 of the Schein On podcast, absolutely tremendous. Laurie Gerber was brilliant. Tremendous spot with her in the Schein On podcast featured guest segment. Thank you to our sponsors, Muffin Crumbles and Rhonda Nordyke, financial divorce advocate. She's as good as it gets. My guy, producer Dave, you brought your A game, as you always do on the Schein On podcast.
Extra hour of daylight does wonders for my energy, and I know you too, Evan.
Dave, you got that daylight savings glow. And to all the listeners, you can listen to the episode and all Schein On podcast episodes wherever you get your podcast. I'm Evan Schein, and I'll talk to you again real soon.